must not have great purpose. I'm not Mandela. I didn't suffer. I didn't die early like Martin Luther King. So we sort of relegate purpose to the other person that's bigger than us. And I always say purpose is not bigger or smaller. It really is one size fits all.
Ooh, there is so much more in store from Jade Simmons. That's just a tiny sample of our talk. She's joining us for this week's edition of Conversations from Studio 5. I'm your host, Ephraim Graham. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, Jade is not only a classical concert pianist, but she's also a transformational speaker who ran for president as an independent in 2020. She's sitting down to talk with us about her life, her music, and her role in politics, as well as how you can find your purpose. I typically end my conversations with people with this question, but in light of your story, I want to begin with this question.
Okay.
If you could go back and talk to your 8-year-old self, what will you tell that little girl?
I would actually probably leave my 8-year-old self alone. She was good.
No.
I would talk to my 12 or 13-year-old
12,
self,
okay.
who was extremely hyper-competitive, planned out her life, swore she knew exactly when everything was going to happen, and I would tell her she has no idea what's about to happen, what she's in for, but to be okay with the divine detours that are about to happen. Because even though they won't look like the plan she jotted down, they're going to be better and beyond her expectation.
What would you say your first divine detour was?
Oh, I've had so many of them. Probably one of the most colorful ones. I competed in the Miss America pageant, and I already said I'm hyper competitive. So listen, if we're gonna do it, let's do the whole thing. Let's win, right? There was no other option for me, and I trained really hard. I had a dream team out of Chicago. I was a student at Northwestern, and I went there with only one outcome in mind, which was to win the whole thing. And I ended up being first runner-up, which is second place. So if it's the person on stage when the two girls are holding hands and they're lying to each other going, I hope it's you, no, I hope it's you, and I hope it's you. And you're like, I really hope it's me. And then they call her name and you're like, I kind of wanted it to be me. But if you watch the video clip, you'll see me sort of step forward right before they actually say that it's her that's the winner. And I had this incredible piece that I didn't really want to have, but I sort of knew in that moment that it wasn't going to turn out as I thought. And I was devastated because I'd worked very hard. But long story very short, that year the Miss America organization had a bit of an internal scandal where the Miss America didn't get to go out and be Miss America for almost the first 3 to 4 months because my issue was youth suicide prevention. Columbine had just happened right before I went to Miss America. Suddenly mental health, mental illness, suicide were hot button issues. I spoke even more than had I had the title of Miss America, and that's when I learned that I actually had a gift for speaking and for impacting. So that was the first big one. I didn't like it. I still want the special edition ruby crown from Miss America 2000, don't get me wrong. But it was one of those big moments where I understood, okay, we plan and prepare, but we have to release the outcome. I'd be lying if I said I had that all intact then, but I can look back and see that's when I first started to understand we weren't as in control as we thought.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I'm surprised to learn about you in preparing for this interview in terms of divine detours and things is you were a presidential candidate in 2020.
Yeah, so you just jumped right in. Listen, that's the biggest divine detour. I have learned to loosen the reins in terms of what I think the plans are going to be, but nothing prepares you for, I want you to stop everything you're doing and do this instead. Now, let me preface and say, I didn't wake up one day and suddenly decide to run for president. God had been planting some political seeds for a while now. My father, who I'm blessed is still living, is in Charleston, South Carolina. He's a civil rights activist. So we've grown up, my sister and I, in a household of very vocal people. We're very aware of where injustice is, and our fathers always taught us, if you see something, you have to do something about it or say something about it. That being said, I remember when 2016 happened and we saw all these unusual presidential candidates. I was actually preaching in church during the Republican primaries in 2016, and I said to the congregation, pay very close attention to all these unusual candidates. I believe God is preparing us all to be unusual candidates wherever he needs us, to send us wherever. Be prepared. And you know, sometimes you find out you're preaching to yourself. So fast forward, I had already started to believe that I might do something in the political realm, but I wasn't planning it for it to be then. My business was at its height, was at its peak. I was having the most revenue I'd had in the speaking world. And God told me to shut everything down around November, catch this, of 2019. I was still holding on come December, finally shut everything down. Woke up January 1st and heard very clearly, run now, not later. And I ran as an independent, which you can imagine in such a contentious year. People were not wanting an independent. They wanted to be red or blue. And I ran, but 2 months into it, COVID happened. So this business that I'd been holding on so tightly, which was about speaking in front of thousands of people, was shut down anyway. And so isn't it something how God will call you to be obedient in advance? He doesn't want us to wait for when we have to, but can we do it when he calls you to? So that's the front part of that story. I ran, and it was one of the most remarkable experiences I've ever had. You do learn that things aren't what they seem. Many people have no idea that I ran in 2020 because we faced a complete media shutout. No media would cover me as an independent. Many of the producers considered me to be a bit of a problem for the left, a bit of a problem for the right. So it was very interesting to kind of be in a no man's land. Now, if you can get close to feeling like Noah, that's sort of how I felt for all of 2020. But I'm so proud of that move, and God allowed us to provide an option for many people who'd felt like they'd been going into the voters booth holding their noses. They finally said, we can vote for someone we believe in and sleep well at night. So it was a powerful experience.
What did your dad think?
My dad was scared to death, you know, and this is a very vocal man. He's fearless. But when, you know, you tell your father, I am jumping into this ring, my husband, you know, I tell my husband as well, I'm jumping into this ring. He had to get off social media because I was probably insulted more in those 10 months of running for office than my entire existence on the planet. That was hard for him. For my dad, he wanted to fight all the battles. And he fights very differently than I fight. We'll just say he uses a little more colorful language than I do. And so it was a really brave moment of having support, but also feeling like it was just me and God on this journey. I would not trade it in for the world. I learned so much about who God is, the potential of this nation. Spoiler alert, we are not who they show us to be on television. There really is not this divide that we think. When you talk to people one-on-one, they all want so many of the same things. They all want to see a more human environment in the way that we operate, and they want to treat each other well. So I believe this nation has incredible purpose, and I was honored, and maybe will still be honored in the future, that God has chosen to use me in that way to serve as a different voice, one that I hope pierced through some of the darkness of that season.
2024.
When does this air? We'll see. You know, the thing is, I said I was competitive, right? So when you jump in, I think what's so crucial is I know that it was God telling me the first time. It must be him the next time. It can't now be because, hey, I got a taste for that and I know what we can do differently. I have to hear his voice as clearly as I heard it the first time. So I'm still listening for the when. In particular, you know, a nation has to be ready to do something new. They have to be tired of what's been done before. And really the truth is the best leaders are the ones who are called forth, more so than the ones raising their hands saying, pick me, pick me. So I believe there is a time where there's a groundswell for something different. This nation was founded as an independent nation. So I believe being independent really is our mandate. And so I'm just waiting for the rest of the American people to catch up to that revelation.
I like that. I like that. We need to be independent. I think church needs to be independent.
There we go. We need a whole other hour.
We need
another hour.
We need it.
Yeah.
Now, you've written a book called Purpose the Remix.
That's right.
What inspired it? Did your purpose get remixed? What happened?
It did. It did. You know, my first book is called Audacious Prayers. And so there I was trying to get us to pray boldly, as big as the God we serve. But when I wrote Purpose the Remix, one of the things I realized is one of the recurring questions from people in all walks of life was, what is my purpose? And I feel like I'd lived the first half of my life believing my purpose was to play the piano. And I think we all believe it's the thing we do. It's to be a broadcaster, it's to be a writer. And the revelation that I believe God has been giving me over the years, and he did it first at the piano, was you are not these 88 keys. You are not the perfectly played Mozart, which I've never played it perfectly, right? And so I'm going, I can't even be perfect at Purpose, right? You are not the degrees, you are not the achievements, Jade, the achievement holic, right? These are not who you are. But what happens in my people, in other people, he says, when you are doing the gift that I've given you or the skill that you've learned, that is purpose, that outbreak effect, right? You know, if I were to interview the people who know you, I'd start to hear a theme, and they'd say, oh, whenever I speak to Ephraim, whenever I call him and tell him all my business, this is what I feel after that encounter. I met one of your incredible social media coordinators, Brenton, and we were talking about this effect that he has when he comes around. He humanizes a situation. And I told him, I dare you to look back. You're going to see a track record of that humanization. It follows us. So purpose, I believe, is not something we have to go run out and discover. We don't have to go live in India for a year, eat, pray, love, right? Any of those things. It's already been operating, and so our job is to look back and see what the wake is that we've been leaving for our entire lives, and then pick that up and on purpose move forward with it.
What's made it so difficult to find it? I'm so blown away at the people who never find it. Or people
Majority of people, by the way.
Or people who I think have found it, but then I see
They don't know it.
They walk away. I've seen some commit suicide.
That's right.
What?
Yeah, it is because of that disconnect. And you say, what makes us feel like it's so hard to find? We've been told that it's hard, it's elusive. And I feel like God's saying, no, actually, before you were born, I implanted it into you, appointed, anointed, all the things. And so one of the difficulties you think about just, I love movies. I love superhero movies. Well, we think Superman has purpose, right? We think those Marvel characters all have purpose, or Mother Teresa or Pat Robertson had purpose, right? Because they've built these big, grand things. And that can make us feel as individuals, well, I must not have great purpose. I'm not Mandela. I didn't suffer. I didn't die early like Martin Luther King. So we sort of relegate purpose to the other person that's bigger than us. And I always say purpose is not bigger or smaller. It really is one size fits all. And when we talk about things like suicide and depression, you will almost always see a disconnect from purpose. If I have no reason for being here, what am I doing anyway? And if all the things I want or all the things I do are failing, what am I doing anyway? But I think waking up and realizing that just you being you, the version that God has created you to be, the biggest, boldest version possible, you showing up has an effect. And if we can reconnect to that outbreak effect, there's a connection there that's much harder to sever than a vocation, an education, a skill, or a talent.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Can't let you go without talking about the piano.
Of course. Of course.
I don't even know how to describe what you do at the keys. I feel it's indescribable. What introduced you to it, initiated that love and passion?
My mother plays piano as well. And when I was little, she played at church. So 8-year-old Jade that you were talking about spent all those Wednesday nights and Sunday mornings up under the pews trying to get some sleep while she was, at worship practice and all these things. My father is also an amateur musician. He just put an instrument in front of him and he likes to play, and he always played African drums as I was growing up. So I always heard music. And when I wanted to play, unfortunately in classical, you start when you're 3, 4, 5 years old. I didn't start until I was 8. So I got to the instrument late in the world of classical, but I loved it. I was one of those kids you didn't have to make practice. And a little bit of what I was able to do earlier on 700 Club is I was playing a mashup of Rachmaninoff and We Three Kings. First of all, that was a debut here because I haven't played Christmas music in I don't know how long. So I put that together just for CPN.
Thank you.
Yes. But what I like to do is add something unexpected in the music. People think they know classical, so I like to do something to it that makes you go, oh, maybe this is different. They think they know hip hop, I like to do something that makes it different. Today my concerts go from classical all the way to rap, believe it or not. And when we talk about purpose again and impacting people, the complaint was always classical music was elitist or monolithic. When I started diversifying what I did, allowing the different sides of myself that God has put in me, when I let those things show, even in the music, spanning the genres, the funny thing is the audience started to change itself. It became something that was much more inviting, much more multicultural, and people were coming for an experience instead of a piano recital.
I like that. I like that. If you could look back and contemplate your life, what would you say has been the lowest low?
We had a season where my mother became ill, and we found out about it later than we would have liked to find out about it. And I'm blessed that both of my parents are still living. But that was one of those things they don't teach you. Nobody teaches you how to handle the transition where your parents, who are invincible, big, strong people, suddenly need you to be the caretaker. That was an eye-opening moment. It was a switching of roles. That was sort of difficult to fathom because my mother is my superhero. She's the one who made sure I got into the most incredible universities, and she was almost like a sports agent for me, right? Negotiating the scholarship deals and these things. So to see that was probably an extreme low for us as a family. I'm happy to report that 2 years later now, she is still more than kicking and has owned kind of her new health journey. So to see that is powerful. And for her to be the ones sitting in the room when me and my sister are preaching or speaking. I actually am a coach, and my mother joined my coaching program, right? So when you see that reversal, it takes that low and really flips it to something powerful that we get to also not just care for our parents, but the lives we live might also still teach them something. That's something I'm still wrapping my head around today.
Nice. The highest high?
Hottest high. Well, you're gonna think I'm pandering. Today was pretty awesome.
Oh,
Let me
wow.
tell you why. And I've had some incredible, really awesome achievements. I've played the White House. I've gotten to play at the U.S. Supreme Court. Today was one of those full circle moments. This is my last engagement of the year. And when I was growing up, my grandmother watched CBN relentlessly. I thought we only had one channel because this was always on. And so today it hit me. She's no longer with us, but I'm in a space that I don't think she would have fathomed. The little girl that was sitting on the bed with her, watching Pat Robertson, would be in these same spaces. So it's a different kind of high. It really is a full circle, and to come at the end of the year is really powerful and reflective for me to think that this would make her extraordinarily proud.
And with this question, I know you're a proponent of mental health, and you talk about suicide and prevention. I want to know what you would say specifically to Black men when it comes to dealing with our stuff.
Wow. When I first started working in the area of youth suicide prevention, and let me just do the disclaimer, right? I'm not a certified psychological or mental health professional. I just was blessed to work in that arena for a few years. It's funny you asked that question in that way, because the early studies in suicidology actually used the Black family and the Black male as models for suicide prevention. They couldn't put their finger on it, but they did suspect it had something to do with the connection to faith, religion, going to church. And that as the years went, when Black families specifically moved out of kind of having a faith-based existence, we saw suicide numbers go up. And the Black man specifically became second. So you would have Caucasian men, and then the next that die in the larger numbers are Black men. I think there is, I don't want to say fictional, but there is a weight and a burden that I believe we as Black people and Black men especially have taken on. And that burden contains in it the very reality of our history as a people, and then the very reality of what seems like the bleakness of our future. And I think for any of us to overcome that burden, we actually even have to for as long as we can, step outside of the identity that comes from here and remember the identity that comes from there. There's something about remembering whose child you really are that reminds you are not the fatherless child or the motherless child, but you have this eternal Father who has made a path and gone before you and made all the crooked places straight. But to remember that we must not take on the burdens that others or society or history even tries to make us carry, but that we are free and freed to carve a new path, and it doesn't have to look like the ones that have come before us. There's something about that freedom that comes in the identity that you talk about. We talked about that disconnect. That identity piece is huge. And one of the things when I was running for president, we had a focus on men, and people thought this was so unusual for a woman. Well, aren't you a feminist? Why are you focused on the men? And I said, because no one is really focused on the men. And I think there is a whole movement now we're seeing rise up for the mental health of Black men, allowing us as Black people to speak openly about mental illness. I mean, that's first of all a huge stride to even do that. But again, that openness, realizing we're not alone and we don't have to carry the burdens that society has placed on us.
Amen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, wow. What a great conversation. Jade Simmons, the powerhouse speaker and pianist, is famously nicknamed classical music's #1 maverick. For more on her work, simply go to her website, jadesimmons.com. I want to thank you so much for joining us for this edition of Conversations from Studio 5. Please continue to make this your destination for uplifting interviews in the world of lifestyle entertainment as we take deep dives into faith. I hope you'll join us next week. Next week, we're sitting down with Chris Meledandri. He is the founder of Illumination Studios, and he's going to talk about a new film called Migration. For more information on the show, please be sure to check out our Facebook page. You can also find us on Instagram simply by searching Studio 5. Again, I'm your host, Ephraim Graham. I look forward to seeing you right here next week on the podcast.